So folks, we're at page 257 of God to Man and Man to God, the Discourses of Mir Baba, edited by Charles Purdom. Here we have uh, discourse number 31, Work for the Spiritual Freedom of Humanity. All over the world, the spirit of man is crying for freedom. Love for freedom and search for freedom are characteristic of our time. But in all races and under all climes, in all countries and at all times, the watchword for groping and struggling humanity has been freedom. Yet there are few who understand the implications of freedom, and there are many who, in their partial understanding of it, strive only for the attainment of relative freedom. Thus, different persons long
Aspa,
for different
Aspa,
kinds.
please come here.
Thus, different persons long for different kinds of freedom according to the different things they have come to value. Freedom of life usually expresses itself by demanding the external conditions of the existence people wish to lead. Thus, those who identify their being with their country seek national or political freedom. Those who are animated by economic purposes seek economic freedom. Those who are inspired by religious aspirations seek freedom of religion. And those who are enthusiastic about sociological or cultural causes seek freedom of movement and freedom of expression in respect of the ideals they cherish and wish to propagate. There are few who realize that basic freedom, which gives true value to different kinds of relative freedom, is spiritual freedom. Even when all the external conditions of a free life are fulfilled and guaranteed, the soul of man remains in bondage if it has failed to realize spiritual freedom. Meher, are you ready to read? Want to? Unmute yourself. Oh, she's busy. All the different kinds of freedoms that are associated with external conditions exist only within certain limits. For the freedom that an individual or community or state seeks must be consistent with similar freedoms for other individuals, communities, or states. National, economic, religious, or cultural freedom expresses itself in and by means of the duality of existence. It lives on duality and is sustained by duality. Therefore, it has necessarily to be relative and limited. It cannot be infinite. It exists only in varying degrees. And even when won through persistent effort, it cannot be a permanent attainment, since the external conditions that have been secured are not permanent, but deteriorate in the course of time. Spiritual freedom. Only spiritual freedom is unlimited, won through persistent effort. It is secured forever. Though spiritual freedom expresses itself in and through the duality of existence, it is grounded in the realization of the unity of all life. and is sustained by it. One important condition of spiritual freedom is freedom from wanting. It is want that fetters life through attachment to the conditions that fulfill that want. If there is no want, there is no dependence. The soul is enslaved through wanting. When the soul breaks the shackles of wanting, it emancipates itself from the bondage to the bodies, to the mind, and to the ego. This is spiritual freedom, which brings the final realization of the unity of all life and puts an end to doubts and worries. Rosalie, you care to read? Unmute. I'll start over again and unmute first.
Yes, I'd like to put an end to doubts and worries. Only in spiritual freedom can one have abiding happiness and unimpaired self-knowledge. Only in spiritual freedom can there arise the supreme certainty of truth realization. Only in spiritual freedom can there be the ending of sorrow and limitation. And only in spiritual freedom can one live for all and yet be detached amidst activities. Any other freedom is comparable to a house that is built on the sand. And any other attainment is fraught with the fear of decay. Therefore, there is no gift greater than the gift of spiritual freedom. And there is no task more important than the task of helping others to do it, to it. Those who understand the supreme importance of spiritual freedom have not only to strive for it for themselves, but also to share the God-given duty of helping others to win it. Those who are inspired by the spirit of selfless service are quick to render humanity all possible help through the provision of the necessities of life, such as clothes and shelter, food and medicine, education, and other achievements of civilization. And in the path of duty, they are not only prepared to fight for the weak against aggression and oppression, but also to lay down their lives for the sake of others. All these forms of service are good, but from the ultimate point of view, the help which secures spiritual freedom for humanity surpasses them all. The way to help others to spiritual freedom. The way to help others to attain spiritual freedom is far different from the ways of rendering other kinds of help. To the hungry, food is provided, and they have only to eat it. To the naked, clothes are provided, and they have only to wear them. And to the homeless, houses are provided, and they have but to dwell in them. But to those who are in the agonies of spiritual bondage, there is no ready-made means that can give them relief. Spiritual freedom has to be won by oneself, for oneself, through watchful and unfailing war against the false self. Those who would be soldiers in the cause of truth have to help others, not only in launching upon the thrilling enterprise of attaining victory over oneself, but also in every step they take towards that attainment. There is no other way of sharing their burden. The task for spiritual workers, addressed to disciples at large. I am very happy that in response to my call, you have gathered to receive my message. In the path, the most important condition of discipleship is readiness to work for the spiritual cause of bringing humanity to the realization of God. I am glad that through faith and love for me, you have wholeheartedly offered yourselves for sharing my work of spiritualizing the world. And I have full confidence that you will not only inherit for yourselves the truth which I bring, but also that you will become enthusiastic torchbearers for humanity. Enveloped in deep ignorance. Because of its supreme importance for the true and final well-being of humanity, spiritual work has an imperative claim on all who love humanity. It is, therefore, very necessary to be quite clear about its nature. The whole world is firmly established in the false idea of separateness. And being caught in the illusion of duality, it is subject to all its confusions. Spiritual workers have to redeem the world from the throes of imagined duality by bringing home to people the truth of the unity of all life. The root cause of the illusion of manyness is that the soul, in its ignorance, identifies itself with its bodies or the ego mind. The physical and subtle bodies, as well as the ego minds of the mental bodies, are all mediums for experiencing the different states of the world of duality. But they are not the medium for knowing the true nature of the self, which is above them all. By being identified with the bodies or the ego mind, the self gets caught up in the ignorance of manyness. The self in the bodies and ego mind is really one undivided existence. But as it gets confused with these bodies and the ego mind, which are its vehicles, it considers itself to be limited and looks upon itself as being only one among many, instead of looking upon itself as the one reality. The true self of everyone is eternally one with the one undivided and indivisible universal self, which is the one reality. Yet false identification with the bodies or the ego mind creates the illusion of manyness within the whole, in which there is no room for any separateness or duality. Bodies and the ego mind are only the vehicles of consciousness. And as the self experiences the different planes of the world through its different mediums or vehicles, it goes through different states of consciousness. Most persons are unconscious of their true nature as God. God realization is only latently present in them. But those who have cast off the veil of duality experience the self through itself, independently of any vehicles. And in this experience, the self consciously knows itself as identical with God, who is the unity and reality of all being. Life in the truth of the unity of all brings with it freedom from limitations and sufferings. It is the self-affirmation of the infinite as infinite. In this state of spiritual freedom and perfection, ego life is finally surrendered to experience the divine life in the truth. And God is known and affirmed as the one reality. To realize God is to dwell in eternity. It is a timeless experience, but spiritual work exists in relation to the souls caught up in the mazes of the multiplicity of the creation, which is bound by time. Spiritual workers cannot afford to ignore the element of time in creation, for that would be to ignore the spiritual work itself. It is imperatively necessary to be aware of the flow of time in creation, and particularly necessary to appreciate fully the supreme importance of the moment in the near future in which will be witnessed the dispensation of the truth of spiritual wisdom.
Thanks, Rosalie. Rolf, do you care to read, Rolf? Unmute.
Okay, I'll give her a go here. Yeah.
Let me turn the page. There we go.
Warning, warning to spiritual workers. The task for spiritual workers to help me in this dispensation of the truth to suffering humanity means that you have not only to prepare others to receive this truth, but to get established in it yourselves. You can help others to gain spiritual freedom and to come out of the illusion of duality only if you yourself do not lose this idea of unity while working for others. This is not easy, for others are inclined to create divisions where they do not exist, and to allow no respite to spiritual workers. The mind has to be purged of all forms of selfishness to inherit life and eternity, which I bring. It is by no means an easy task to persuade people to give up their selfishness. It is not by accident that people are divided into the rich and the poor, the pampered and the neglected, the rulers and the ruled, the leaders and the masses, the oppressors and the oppressed, the high and the low, the winners of laurels and the recipients of ignominy. These differences have been created and are sustained by those who through spiritual ignorance are attached to them, and who are so confirmed in perverse thinking and feeling that they are not conscious of their perversity. They are accustomed to looking upon life as divided into compartments and are unwilling to give up, scrolling the text upward, for their efforts are only superficial. Eugene,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yep, sorry.
we need some fresh reading. We're
Uh,
right. We wore out what was on the page.
Sounds good.
But I lost my place. What is that? It thinking and feeling that they are not conscious. Need to go down maybe a sentence. I think sustained by those. Whoa. These differences have been created and are sustained by those who through spiritual ignorance are attached to them, and who are so confirmed in perverse thinking and feeling that they are not conscious of their perversity. They are accustomed to looking upon life as divided into compartments and are unwilling to give up their separative attitude. When you launch upon your spiritual work, you will encounter divisions that people desperately seek to maintain, which they accentuate and fortify and strive to perpetuate consciously or unconsciously. Mere condemnation of these divisions will not enable them to be destroyed. They are maintained by separative thinking and feeling, and separative thinking and feeling yield only to the touch of love and understanding. You have to win people to the life of truth. They cannot be coerced into spirituality. They have to be won. You have to win people into the life of truth. They cannot be coerced into spirituality. It is not enough that you should have friendliness and goodwill in your hearts to succeed in your work. You have to bring home to others the conviction that you are helping them to redeem themselves from bondage and suffering, and to realize the highest to which they are heirs. There is no other way to help them to spiritual freedom and enlightenment. For rendering spiritual help, you should have clear understanding of the following 4 points. You want to turn it over to someone else, Eugene, or shall I continue?
Continue for another 4 minutes if you have
4
the,
minutes.
power.
Okay, number 1, rendering spiritual help. You should have clear understanding of the following 4 points. 1, apparent descent into the lower level. Now, what could that mean? It may often be necessary for you apparently to descend to the lower level of those you are trying to help. Though your purpose is to raise people to the higher level of consciousness, They may fail to profit by what you say unless you talk in terms they understand. What you convey to them through thought feeling should not go over their heads. They are bound to miss it unless you adapt it to their capacity and experience. However, it is important to remember that while doing this, you should not lose your own level of understanding. You will change your technique as they arrive at deeper understanding, and your apparent descent into the lower level will only be temporary. 2. Spiritual understanding ensures all-sided progress. You must not divide life into departments and then attempt to deal with each department separately. Departmental thinking is an obstacle to integral vision. Thus, if you divide life into politics, education, morality, material advancement, science, art, religion, mysticism, and culture, and think only of one of these aspects, solutions to the problems of life cannot be found. But if you succeed in awakening spiritual inspiration and understanding, they will be active in all aspects of life. As spiritual workers, you have to aim at an inclusive and creative attitude to the individual and social problems of life.
Thanks, Rolf. Mayhair, please. Could you start again and this time unmute? Thanks.
From spiritual progress?
Yes,
Okay.
slowly.
Spiritual progress consists of the spontaneous growth of understanding from within. As spiritual workers, you have also to remember that the spiritual wisdom that you desire to convey to others is latently present in them, and that you have only to be instrumental in awakening in spiritual progress, is not accumulating from without, but unfoldment from within the master, is necessary for anyone to arrive at self-knowledge. But the significance of the help given by the master consists in the fact that he enables others to come into possession of their own possibilities. 4. Some questions are more important than answers. You are spiritual workers, must not lose sight of the real work which the master desires to get done through you. When it is understood that the spiritual wisdom is latent in all you have, is it no, or how do you?
I think
just
you're right.
how?
You're
No.
right. It's no. Yeah.
No longer be anxious to provide ready-made answers and solutions to problems. You will be content to set up a new problem to clarify the nature of the problem with which people are faced, you may have done your duty. If you ask them a question which they would not themselves have asked when placed in some practical situation. At other times, you will have done your duty if you succeed in putting them in a searching and questioning attitude so that they begin to tackle their own problems, to give them a deeper point of view or suggest them a fruitful line of thought and action may mean more than thrusting upon them your own answer, but the question which you may help them to formulate for themselves should neither be theoretical or unnecessarily complicated. If they are simple, straightforward, and fundamental, the question will answer themselves. And fundamental, the question will answer themselves, and people will find their own solutions. But you will have rendered indesirable
That's
and valuable service.
indispensable.
Indiscernible and valuable service
Can't do without.
to them, because without your intervention, they would not have arrived at the solution of their problems from the spiritual point of view. Spiritual workers must necessarily be confronted with many obstacles, but obstacles are meant to be overcome. Even if some of them seem to be insurable, you have
Insuperable.
to do your best, irrespective of result or conquest obstacles and the
Consequences.
overcoming success.
That-
Your task is already done.
hold your horses. Irrespective of results or consequences. Continue from here, please.
Okay, consequence, obstacles, and the overcoming success and failure and illusions which the dominion of unity and your task is already done. When performed wholeheartedly, steadfast, and one-pointed in your desire to help my cause of awakening humanity to the soul reality and to the deep happiness of God and God alone, you will get many opportunities for spiritual work. I am fully confident that you will lend yourself ungrudgingly to this work.
That's ungrudgingly.
Ungrudgingly to this work. You will do so if you unreservedly follow the spiritual instructions, which will be given to you separately. Can someone take over from there, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Marvin, can you unmute, please, and continue?
Yes, and could we maybe read just the end of that last paragraph again?
No doubt.
I'd like to hear it all. That was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, the last paragraph is enough, I think.
Because Baba says it's the most important part of his work.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Caught my attention.
How about from spiritual workers?
Yeah, go ahead, Marv.
Spiritual workers must necessarily be confronted with many obstacles, But obstacles are meant to be overcome. Even if some of them seem to be insuperable, you have to do your best irrespective of results or consequences. Obstacles and their overcoming, success and failure, are illusions within the domain of unity. And your task is already done when performed wholeheartedly, steadfast and one-pointed in your desire to help my cause of awakening humanity to the sole reality and to the deep happiness of God and God alone. You will get many opportunities for spiritual work. I am fully confident that you will lend yourself ungrudgingly to this work. You will do so if you unreservedly follow the spiritual instructions which will be given to you separately. States of God. God in the beyond state is absolutely independent of the world, is the source of all power, knowledge, bliss, beauty, and wisdom, but is neither conscious of these nor of himself. God in the beyond state, Allah, Paramatman, is independent of the world and is conscious of his power, beauty, eternity. But he does not, in that state, express all these. He is eternal in the sense that he ever was, is, and will be. We imagine he was. Before that, he was. And still before that, he was. One that has no beginning and no end. Imagination cannot grasp and cannot reach him. We logically conclude that this state is beyond imagination and understanding. You cannot understand God. Whatever is said about God in volumes of Puran, scriptures, and the Gita is all mere talk. It is incorrect to say God is one. The idea of oneness limits him. He is infinite. To speak of him correctly is to say God, quote unquote, is. We can say this of him only in his beyond state, where there is no beginning, for there is no end, and nothing exists but God. Quote, nothing, unquote, exists also. Let us see how this nothing represents the whole universe. Nothing exists in God latently. If only God is everything. And in this infinite everything, nothing is latent, but is. The first imagination, which Vedanta calls Lahar and Sufism calls Guman, is the first urge in the beginningless eternity to know itself. As soon as this urge appeared, a beginning began, not of God, but of the urge that produced nothing, which was latent in God. What was the urge? It was, who am I? Nothing was produced as long as the urge was there. God, instead of knowing himself, began to know nothing. This process may be likened to a man tickled out of his sleep into a gradual opening of his eyes, a progressively full awakening. When he awoke, he saw the object of his own shadow, not himself. Passing gradually through 7 stages of the rise of consciousness, he attained to a full opening of the eyes and consciousness of a fully manifested shadow. Shadow was latent in God. He saw not himself as such, but himself in the shadow. Impressions gathered in transitions of the shadows through alternations of pain and pleasure, beauty and ugliness, births and deaths, piled up in profusion, germs of imagination and illusion. To know himself as he really is, fully open-eyed consciousness should remain in human form, and the 7 inward stages of the descending journey traversed by piercing within. Before knowing himself, creation of forms and experiences was necessary. Some suffer, some are happy. You don't remember having gone through all the dual states of experience of being a woman, a leper, and so forth. It was a bad dream. It will be so till you become free. When the urge for knowing himself became, a beginning was made. It should have an end, beginning and end, and all the paraphernalia of things and becomings that go along with them are what constitute opposites to God. God's beyond state is formless, so nothing must have form and is latent in everything. God. God has no end. Nothing has an end. God is not limited. Nothing is limited. Nothing constitutes 3 states: mental, subtle, and gross. When nothing manifests, binding in law manifests. Law is established on all the 3 domains. Law is there, but it is of nothing. Nothing is nothing. Raise up your hand. The light falling upon it is, as it were, the urge, and the shadow you see of the hand is latent in light. Shadow is nothing. Still, it is. Law binds equally all, except those who become free. One principal binding appears in varied aspects, like the uniformity of 2 hands, 1 head, and 2 eyes running through the differences of human features and figures. According to law, the number of lives and deaths with the measure of suffering and happiness is fixed. Until the total number of incarnations are gone through and the amount of experience is earned and lost, no freedom can be attained. But all experience is in nothing. There is no suffering. When I say this, you grouse. Since you do not know the law of nothingness, you think there is nothing like justice. When one escapes law and merges in God, who is beyond law, he becomes God. There is no binding. He is Majub. If he comes down, he brings God on earth. But law exists on earth. He brings law exceeded God down to a law abiding God. God in the beyond is conscious of his infinite power. Law cannot touch him because law exceeded God is infinite, mighty, and powerful. He is Jivan Mukta. His state is unique. He does everything and does nothing. He is Majub in normal consciousness. The avatar is law exceeded God. He is all powerful. He comes down from the beyond state to normal consciousness. Law cannot touch him, but he touches law, grasps law, acts like an ordinary human being, and uses power to make others free from law.
The end.
Wow.
Let's see. This is an index.
Wow.
Give it a quick look.
Maybe stop the share. Or
Oh, just for the folks at home to see a glance at it a little bit. That's it. Okay, let me stop the share and stop the recording. Where to go? There we go.